So I know y'all probably know what Squid Games is by now, but if you don't know what that is, well, Squid Games is a super popular TV show that's on Netflix, and it takes place in South Korea. Now, in this TV show, there is some mysterious man that's wearing masks, and they go around trying to find people to participate in these crazy games that can either lead to death or lead them to a lot of money. And a lot of people participate because they're either homeless, they're in debt some type of way, or they just really need the money. So they're vulnerable, and they choose to participate in these crazy games where you might potentially be killed. So now that I kind of gave you a quick rough draft of what Squid Game's about, I know you're probably thinking like that sounds insane. Like people actually going to play some crazy games, and if you don't win the game, you get killed. There's no way that's true, right? Well, what if I told you Squid Games was actually real? Like this is a real thing that actually happened. Like there's no way, right? Well, I'm here to tell you right here, right now, that Squid Games was real. Now, it probably wasn't exactly how we seen it in the movie, of course. Of course, they're going to switch some things up, make things a little different. But this was actually something that actually happened in South Korea. Now, let me explain. So, back in, I believe, 1984 or 1986, somewhere around that time, South Korea was going through a lot. There was a lot of homeless people, a lot of people that couldn't really afford no place to live. So the government or whoever was in charge was going around basically kidnapping people, forcing them onto a bus or to a van or whatever it was, and bringing them into this place, just like Squid Games. But the place was called Brothers Home, and Brothers Home was filled with a lot of people that just needed some place to stay. But while staying there, it was just a big disaster. I mean, people probably would rather live outside. They made people wear these green jumpsuits just like Squid Games, and they also changed their names to numbers just like Squid Games. Now here's a little article from a man named Han Jong-sun, and he was actually one of those people that was kidnapped and put into the brothers' home. So he witnessed it firsthand, and he actually been through it. So he literally knows everything that happened. He goes on to tell the world about the day he was actually kidnapped and put into the brothers' home. He says, it was a beautiful autumn day in 1984, and Han, who was then 8 years old, was enjoying a long hope for a trip to the city with his busy father. But Han's father still had a few errands to run, so he decided the quickest and safest thing to do was to leave the children with an officer at the police station for a few minutes. Like, what can go wrong? Now, that police officer would tear the family apart. A bus stopped right in front of the police station, and they were forced onto the bus. Han recalls more than 30 years later. He says a police officer exchanged unknown signs with the people who got off the bus. He said, we had no idea where we were taken to. Daddy told us to wait here. Daddy is coming. They cried and cried, but nothing changed. And as they cried, they started beating them, saying that they were too loud. The bus was taking them to a private facility that was officially a welfare center. Now, according to testimonies from people that actually survived these things and information from different websites, they say that the detainees, they were used as slave labor at construction sites, farms, and factories during the 1970s and 80s. They were also allegedly raped and tortured, with hundreds of people dying. So instead of forcing them to play games and do these crazy things just like Squid Games, instead they just made them work and slave without pay. And if they didn't, they would be brutally beaten and possibly be killed. Now, if you're thinking just like me, you're probably wondering, where is the police? How is all this happening? Well, the police, they were actually being rewarded for quote unquote cleaning up the streets. by sending these people to these centers. Like, they were pretty much taking advantage of people who were very vulnerable. They took people that were rough sleepers, disabled, some orphan children, or even just normal people who just failed to show their identification when they asked. One man says when he was only 13 years old, he was taken off the streets on his way home from school. A police officer stopped and asked, where did he get this loaf of bread from after he searched his bag? But it was actually just leftover lunch from what he got from school. The police officer didn't believe him, so he kept asking, where did you get the bread from? And as he was asking, he would torture him, burning his genitals with a lighter and beating him. And he said he was going to keep beating him until he confessed to the crime. So the boy just said, I stole it, please let me go. He obviously lied because he just wanted to go home. And about 10 minutes later, a big freezer dump truck arrived and he was forced inside. Now these stories are real crazy, man. Like, I can't believe this was actually going on. They were actually kidnapping kids, people that were disabled. Like, how could you do that to somebody? And you take them somewhere to where they think they're probably about to get help, but they get there and people are dying, getting beaten, starving, forced to work. It's like prison life. Now, if you're still wondering, like, how is this like Squid Games? It's nothing like Squid Games. Well, you gotta listen closely because it's exactly like Squid Games. They were forced into vans. They made them change their names to numbers. The only thing different is that they didn't play any games. I don't think. They were just forced to work instead of playing games. They were forced to work, but they were still getting beaten, being tortured, being killed, probably going through the worst time of their life. And the worst thing about it is they're not getting paid for work. Like, at least in Squid Games, they actually had a chance to win a lot of money. But here, in the real life story, they didn't have no chance to win any money. They were kind of just taken against their will for no reason, just to be beaten and killed. And if you did survive, you probably going through a real hard time with life. You're probably scared still to this day, watching over your shoulder. Like, how could you live a normal life after going through something like that? Most people say that they were only supposed to be there for a year and get help and training and everything, so when they go back on the streets, they'll be good. But people said they were there for 5 years, or some people didn't even make it out, which is sad. But comment down below. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Do y'all agree with me? This is like the real life Squid Games. Squid Games is based on a true story, if you ask me. But that's my opinion. Comment down below and give me y'all opinion. And actually, make sure y'all hit that subscribe button as well.